Good question. So what do administration do when these issues arise, and what are some things they're working on? So Mr. Gregory or Ms. Jackson, do you want to start with that? And maybe if there's some assistant principals that would like to join in with help us with that.
How
Mr.
about
Gregory.
I saw Mr. McBride. I saw him smile, so he must know Skylar. How about we let him start the conversation since HB is his building?
Well, hey, Skylar, and I apologize. I got up for a second and I didn't even hear the question. So, but I just wanted to say hi. But what do administrators do when these issues pop up? Was that?
Yes, yes.
So, kind of a unique situation this year because we weren't in school when George Floyd died. So what we tried to do, and Skylar, I hope your TA talked about this. Engage with our students however we can and try to be honest and let them see us as humans who are also, like Mr. Gregory said, we're not going to solve this in an hour. We're not going to solve this in one conversation, but we want to make sure that our students can come to us. We want to make sure our students have open lines of communication, and that even though we might not be able to solve the issue of police brutality in one or two conversations, we can at least get some tidbits, some talking points when we're talking to our friends, when we're talking to our teachers, when we're out in the community at restaurants, and talk about how racism affects us all, no matter what race or ethnicity we claim.
And Mr. McBride, another part of that, I think Skylar wanting to know is, what if something happens at the school where someone's being treated differently because of their race, or something comes up, people are feeling attacked, or they hear one of their friends might being attacked, or things said about someone that's not appropriate? What can they do, and what does school administration do in that case?
And I think our jobs as administrators would be, first, to make sure the person that this is happening to feels comfortable coming to a trusted adult about this. And Skylar, I hope you would feel that there are adults at HB Woodlawn, and the rest of you students would feel comfortable with some adult, whether it's your favorite teacher, whether it's a counselor, whoever, with what's happening to you, and then develop a plan to make it stop. And not just to punish the individual who's making it happen, but to make sure that that person knows not just that what they're saying is, or what they're doing is hurting someone, but to actually change the behavior and get them to think about things in a different way, so that we can, have school days, feel comfortable at school, think about things, move forward. And so that's what I would hope we would do on a case-by-case basis. And Skylar, I hope you would feel comfortable coming to me or any of your favorite teachers with that, and that we would help solve that problem that was happening to you right then, and then move forward with the knowledge that we would want to take those lessons that we applied and move them into future interactions with other students and other teachers in the building or in other schools that you go to.
So Skylar, I would kind of piggyback on that in terms of the system, and what we're doing as a system is that we're really encouraging administration, our principals, assistant principals, our teachers to really engage in a formal education process so that they feel more comfortable talking to you all as students and talking to students, and those conversations are happening. I think that this is a great opportunity and a great time to bring about where we need to increase our learning, because learning doesn't just stop through K-12, right, or even into college, but we're all have to be continuous in this process of learning. And knowing that sometimes we're not always comfortable with having these conversations. So that's why it's great for us to be here today, and for you all to know that we're having these conversations with adults too, to talk about how do we talk about these things. Emotional learning and social emotional learning right now is at an all-time high, right? You all have dealt with so much with COVID-19, being away from your classmates, your friends, and now having to see and dealing with racism 2020. So we're having these conversations on a daily basis within the school division. Principals are coming to administration at central office and vice versa, and learning how to talk. And one of these things that we want to do is hear from you all, because I think we all know, we all think that we know, but we got to hear from our students, and your voices are so important till we know where to start and where to begin with. So I thank you for your question, and I hope you know that we are working on things, and we know that we don't always get it right. As adults, we don't always get it right, but we're continuing the process of trying to work and engage so that we can make things better for you all within school. So our expectation is that we address it, that we confront the topic head on, that we address it, that we're, we do an investigation, that we're calling the students in, we're talking to them, and we're figuring out where the sources are. And by you all being part of this conversation and being part of the leaders, and I consider you all being leaders who have stepped up and said, hey, we want to do something, is that you'll really be able to help us navigate that. Thanks, Skylar. Is anyone else with any questions? How about
I want to respond one bit to Mr. Gregory. So, Skylar, and to all the students here, I think it's very important that when you see these issues, one way that we can address it is by speaking up and bringing that to the attention of the administration. And even if I think most of us were used to speaking up sometimes when it involves us directly, and if we've been impacted or someone has done something to us, we're more likely, but not always, to speak up. But what I'm asking everyone is not just when it affects you personally, but if you see something, you're hearing something, you're seeing a friend, you're a classmate, even someone you don't know, and you just know what's being done to them, what's being said to them is just not right and it's wrong the way they're being treated. We want you to speak up and let us know. And now is the time to look at all of us as one community, one group, one school. And even if it's someone you've never spoke to before, you don't know their name, but you know and you've seen the way your classmates are treating him or her, please speak up. We all need to support one another. And sometimes when we're the one being treated that way, we don't, we're afraid to speak up, or we're not sure, or we might be so beaten down in a way that we are just giving up. And you might be that one person that can help one of your classmates really step up and be a friend for them, particularly in these times when people don't know what to do and people are afraid. So that's something I would ask all of you students this year. If you haven't done that before, pay more attention, look around, listen, and speak up.
One of the things I would like to point out is that I'm so grateful for our middle school students for participating in this chat. First of all, this is a very complex time without the civil unrest and the pandemic. And so I would just encourage all of our students as they go through social media, because that is where our students get a lot of their information, but encourage them to be aware of fake news and be aware of what's real news. And if they have questions about things that are being posted or they see in the media, that they have these dialogue with their families and people that they trust. That could be a teacher, it could be an administrator, it could be the person that takes care of you in the cafeteria. But continue the conversations and be engaged. Don't shut down at this time. And I know it's, sometimes it's easy to do that, and we encourage that dialogue because you're all very great and very creative and full of discovery. So continue to talk to each other and work with all of us to make things better and to support your own personal and growth and your academic growth.
And just want everyone to know, I actually see two of our resource officers who have also joined the conversation now. So I know that many of you had some questions pertaining to SROs and policing. So they did want to be a part of the conversation and a partnership with us to be able to hear your voices and hear your thoughts. And I think it's very important. I mean, I want to acknowledge that because for them to go through what they've gone through in terms of being police officers and want to join us, I think speaks volumes, and wanted to make sure that they are aware that we know that they're there and want you to know that they're there. So we have Officer Miss Souls, and she's an SRO. She's a brand new SRO in our school system, and I don't even think she has her building assignment yet. So she's waving. I think she's driving in her cruiser.
I am here, but I have to go to a call real quick at the mall, so I will be right back. But Dorian Brooks is on here. I'm also working the road today since school is not in session. So I'm trying to multitask a little bit, but I'll be listening as soon as I get back in the car.
Okay. All right. And we also have SRO Brooks as well.
Hi, good morning.
think we just said, I think he just said good morning. I can't see him, but I think he just spoke to you as well. So to start some of the conversation, I see Mr. Anand on my left. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I was also wondering, this isn't exactly like racism, but I was wondering how you'd like respond to any threats against like LGBTQ plus members or like students.
I think it's great that you brought that up because this conversation just isn't about race, right? So we have to talk about bullying and any forms of bullying, as Dr. Duran mentioned, is that when you see something, say something and speak up. And we have to engage with all of our communities and those who identify, no matter what, wrong is wrong. And it comes from a place of bias. So one of the things I wanted to show is maybe this pyramid of bias on where these belief systems come from. If I'm able to share my screen, then we can look through that in terms of the foundation. So thanks for bringing that up. So we have to really consider, again, bias is bias. Discrimination is discrimination, no matter whether it's due to race or it's due to gender. And we have to also talk about our young ladies. So young men, we need to make sure that we're respectful of our young ladies. That we're not calling them, and if we hear someone calling them out of their names, that we also speak up, because that's very important as we're growing into men. So I would say that also has to be included in gender and identification and those kind of things. So those are all the things that we have on our radar to be able to talk about. I know if Dr. Duran wanted to highlight some things as well.
Sure, I will just say that absolutely, and thank you for that question. In APS, we respect all students, and any LGBT student that is being treated inappropriately. Oftentimes, you might be walking down the hall and you hear a name or someone call a name, teasing about LGBT or being a part of that, and they might not even be LGBT student, but those words are used to try and hurt. Those are the kind of things we have to report and stop. We are not going to tolerate any type of disrespect for students. And if you're being disrespected, you're being harassed, you're being attacked in any way, then we need to know that and we need to follow up. There will be consequences. We want to also have conversations. Sometimes we need to sit down and let people know that what you're saying, maybe you weren't trying to be hurtful, but using certain words to call members of the LGBT community or saying words that are inappropriate, that is hurtful. And sometimes, when we watch TV and the news and movies, they use the words so loosely, and people think it's funny on the news and on movies and TVs to call people certain names, and it's not funny and it's not right. And so sometimes if it's name calling, we might just have a conversation, hope it's going to stop, and then monitor. And if it keeps moving on in terms of harassment, and harassment is when someone keeps doing something to you after you've told them to stop. And after we've had a conversation one time with you once to say, this is not appropriate. This does not feel right to this person. This is not respectful of this person. This is not a space that we're creating where people feel safe. Stop that. If they continue beyond that, then there will be additional consequences. And that's for name calling. If it's something more serious, physical or things of that nature, there will be consequences. And I want all of you to know that's a really important part of APS. So thank you for that question. And again, you're going to hear me say this over and over again. Say something when you hear something or see something, even if it's not directed at you. Mr. Gregory, you have your mute on if you're talking. I'm not.
Just wondering can everyone see the screen? Is the screen share on? Do you see a pyramid in the screen?
Yes. Yes.
So I bring this pyramid up because it's a perfect diagram that shows like the pyramid of hate, which is what we're kind of talking about, and how it starts at the very bottom, which is the basis, which is our bias attitudes. Everybody has biases, and many biases that we have are good biases. For instance, I can't think through everything because sometimes if I wind up thinking too long, which is a part of my brain, then I can, it can cause an accident or wreck. So for instance, if I'm riding a bike and someone opens their door and I have to immediately react to avoid the door. That's a bias because I know that I don't want to get hit by the door. So I just respond and react. So our bias attitudes, right, will include stereotyping, fears, our fears that we have, our differences, justifying biases by seeking out like-minded people, and those kind of things start as the kind of the basis of the pyramid. And then we move up the chain, right? So then we have acts of bias. That includes our language and sensitive remarks that, Dr. Duran was just mentioning, microaggressions, for instance, you speak very well for being a Black person, or that would be an example of a microaggression. Our bias and belittling jokes that we just talked about, social avoidance or excluding people because of who they are or how they identify, name calling, ridicule, those are acts of bias. And then as we move a little bit further up, we look at systemic discrimination. That includes discrimination within our criminal justice system, our inequitable resources in schools, housing, employment, wage disparities. One of those things that we notice is that consistently ladies have been underpaid in terms of, they can have the same job that a male has and they may receive less wages. That would be wage disparities and discrimination. Voter restrictions, so some of those systemic discriminations that we talk about. Further up, we get to bias-motivated violence. That's threats, vandalism that we've seen on properties that we've seen within school, of different hate speech, assaults, terrorism. And then eventually at the very top is genocide, which is really just, annihilating and really an act of hatred against those simply because of who they are. So this really is a good diagram and example of how it all starts. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to start at the very base of it, right? And having these conversations with you all to be able to identify what our biased attitudes are so that we can unroot those from the very beginning before they become acts of any bias or systemic discrimination. So there's any questions about that? Does that kind of make sense? I'm going to kind of unshare my screen. Are there any questions? I can't see the screen as of yet, so someone's got the...
No one has their hand up right now.
Okay.
So love to hear from some more students. Tell us some suggestions. Do you have any ideas for us? We've been talking to you about some of the things we want you to do, and we're going to make sure that we follow up. But are there some things that you wish we would do that you haven't seen happen, or something, a good idea that would make you feel safer or your friends feel safer? Or share with us any ideas. You have a lot of people here who can help make some suggestions here and put some things into action. So I think Skylar, I think that's the same one who spoke last time. You're raising your hand, so I will let you go. But I would love to hear. There's a lot more students in Skylar, and I'm happy to have you here to speak, Skylar. But so you go ahead now, and then someone else, please join him.
So how would you guys tell the difference between someone just joking around with their friends and then someone just being plain rude or racist to someone?
Would like to start with that one. Well, okay.
I can jump in.
Go ahead, Sal. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm the math supervisor that I've worked at 3 schools. I was a teacher at Jefferson, an assistant principal at Ashland, and an assistant principal at Swanson Middle School for several years. And so one of the things I do in having conversations with students is try to help you to recognize that sometimes your jokes, people will laugh off, even if they're offended. It's just a natural part of what people do if they're your friend or they're trying to be your friend. So I would be careful with even those jokes. As a building administrator, for me, it was really hard for you to really get in trouble. But it was easy for you to show me that we may need to have a conversation to be better educated, and for me to help you kind of see the things that you may not have seen or noticed before. So I'm going to say that recognize that sometimes when you joke, a person won't tell you that, wait, that was hurtful or that was painful. even if it is. So I would say that whenever a joke is about someone's character, about their race, sexuality, anything that can be perceived as different, for you or people around you, it might be funny. To them, they may pretend that is funny, and it really isn't. So my recommendation to you would be to avoid those types of jokes. A joke that, if you weren't joking, could be offensive. It's the same thing as a joke that you intended to be funny, may have been funny to you or people around you, but not to that person, even if they didn't tell you. So hopefully that helped with that. But as far as an administrator addressing it, of course, we're all different. We're all human beings, right? We address things differently. But myself, as an administrator, it's a conversation. It's almost always about a conversation, just to help you kind of think through it as you're growing older and learning about people and learning about life.
There's several assistant principals on here. Any of you'd like to talk about how when students come to you and they've been joking and playing around, but it might not have been, how do you address that?
Hi, this is Carmen de la Cruz, and I'm one of the assistant principal at Washington Liberty High School. And I think that to follow up on what Ms. Ellis was saying is, as an administrator, we have conversations. These are opportunities that we would like for a student to know that they can learn from. Because when what we say, what we do hurt other people, can we laugh about those things? You know, you have to reflect about that. If what I say, if it were said to me, would it cause pain? Would I have to mask that pain to fit in? So we take that opportunity to help students reflect about their actions and how those actions affect other people, but inevitably it's going to affect you too, because what you do, you know, says something about you and who you are. And if you're not that person, would you like people to walk away thinking about you in that manner, right? So as an administrator, our goal is to help you reflect and understand so that the action is not repeated. Now, if repeated, then the conversation, it will be a different type of conversation, right? We like, as much as possible, to get other people involved, such as counselors, social workers, psychologists, parents, so that we are all on the same page and we share a common belief about how do we, or what does it look like when we respect others. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Close, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon now, everyone. I think I'd like to also piggyback on what Ms. Ellis, what Ms. De La Cruz has said, and also what the team has expressed earlier about communication. Consider, we all want to assume good intentions and thinking that making jokes is a way of making friends, but I think it is more about having that conversations. If you have to think about it, should I say it or should I not say it, then you probably shouldn't say it in the first place. And it's about making those, creating those safe places for students to have those conversations with adults, so we can coach you through how to make friends and to say things that may, you know, to attract people to you to be your friends, as opposed to making them think twice about wanting to join your friendship circle. So again, if you have to think about it, then you probably shouldn't say it. But again, being open to having those conversations about, you know, the why, you know, about why you shouldn't talk about someone based upon the color of their skin, or the way they wear their hair, or the way they dress, because all of those things are part of a person's culture and is very sensitive to them. So just being mindful of what you say. Is it going to help someone feel good, or is it going to make them, you know, feel uncomfortable? Just to think twice as well. Thank you.
Hi, this is Octavia Carnegie. I'm also an assistant principal at Kenmore. Hi, Ms. Close. A lot of times I will use scenarios with students where I will say, you know, let's walk through this. Let me help you reflect. If someone in your family came home and said, such and such said called me a whatever, an N-word, or whatever the derogatory name is, how would you feel? And then we go through that range of emotions to get to why we should not do that.
Thank you. The other thing I would say to all students is you've asked, what would we do? And we heard some really good answers from several, two assistant principals, Ms. Ellis. I would also say to you students that you have a part in that. And so when you see people start to make fun and wanting to joke, stop and say, I know we're just joking. I know you don't mean this, but this is not appropriate. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about something else. And you step in and help to redirect your friends, because sometimes things start out very small and people aren't meaning to hurt other people, but then it grows and grows and more people get involved and more people start joking, and then people who aren't in that same group of friends start jumping in, and then it gets so out of control. And sometimes, and now we're in the mode that we're learning in home and on our computer virtually, that happens on our computers and through or text or social media. So we have to also understand that you need to say something and stop and say, this is not appropriate, guys. This is not funny. So I hope all of you will get some courage and stand up and say that. And even if people might push back on you and say, who are you to tell me? That's okay. We have sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's not easy to be the one that has to stop it and to stand up and say, no, this is not good. No, how would you like to be treated this way? And so I'm going to tell you, it's not easy, but I hope all of you will do that. And I'm glad that I think you're all on this call today because you want to do that. You want to learn. You want to be better at stopping these kind of conversations. Maybe you've experienced it and know how it feels, or if you've never experienced it and don't know how it feels, just put yourself in your friend's shoes. And I hope that all of you will know we're here to help you as adults, but we also need you to help us and do that as well.
So I think I'm going to call on a few students. Fatima, can you? I see your name at the very bottom. Is there anything you would like to say to us?
Oh wait, oh, that's Skylar.
Oh, Skylar?
Yeah, my name's Fatima, but I go by Skylar. Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Gregory, I believe a student, Logan, put in the chat, I do not recall any post-Civil War unit talking about how history was changed to favor the South. So maybe Ms. Ellis, who works in Department of Teaching and Learning, or Ms. Jackson, you want to talk a little bit about how we're looking at our curriculum and our studies and some things we're trying to do to make sure that we're also providing curriculum that teaches true history and is not racist as well. We do have some books and some things we've learned over the years that have been very not true and have been very racist in what they've taught us about groups of people, or have not told us the whole story. Think about sometimes students when you have conversations with your friends and it's like, well, that's her version, but my version is this, and there's actually somewhere in the middle sometimes, or you don't know with everything that's happened, then you don't know the whole truth. So thank you, Logan, for raising that in the chat, and Ms. Jackson or Ms. Ellis or both or whoever want to join on that. That's a good question for us to share.
It is a very good question. Thank you, Dawn. So, Logan, just to give a little bit of history, I used to be a middle school student too, and so your question is very touching and very emotional for me because a lot of my history was told at home. It was not the narrative that was ever explained in any of the history books. So now, as we move forward in 2020, it's very important for us to do an audit of all of our curriculum, not just history, not just science and social studies, language, art. All of our history classes and courses need overhaul to make sure it reflects the narrative of all students that are in our school district. And so with that being said, we at Department of Teaching and Learning are doing more of the supplemental resources that complement what the state has already, deemed for us to teach our students, but understanding that we have to be more progressive in our thoughts and use a wealth of different materials and resources to discuss all types of topics throughout history and throughout American civilization and how we came about. So those are things that we're all working on. And even in the library services, making sure that our circulation reflects our students and gives very various information and facts about history. So the whole team is working on that together, and hopefully you will start to see that this year as we make these changes to our curriculum across the board. And thank you for asking that question. And then I also see a question, racism is stupid. When you put it into stupid terms, you look different, therefore you are inferior. That is a comment from Casey.
Casey, would you like to expand upon that? Would you like to talk more about that? If you're speaking, we can't hear you. Are you on mute, or are you really didn't want to speak about that?
I can go ahead and chime in because I put a I like. I like by Casey's statement. I just to tell a quick little story. I took a institute, administrators and teachers go to school after we start teaching, just FYI. And so I took a class at Harvard a couple years ago, and we were doing this activity where they really broke us into groups based on these like odd characteristics. So you had your second index finger was longer, or you had an attached earlobe versus detached, and all of these other characteristics. And so once they made a determination of which group you got in, you went to different parts of the room and you started talking to those people and about that feature that you had in common. And it was so interesting because the silliest thing, you would develop this camaraderie around with these people, like, yeah, I have an attached earlobe, and and then at the end of the activity, after we got into these different groups, the professor at that time said, so this is really how we have determined race. Looking at, the amount of melanin in your skin, the color of your skin, these different characteristics about facial features and things like that is really identical to breaking people into groups based on, or having a second toe that's longer, these little characteristics that people have. And the purpose of that was to say that race is really a social construct. Like, we look at these things as easily identifiable, when you look at someone, like the color of their skin, and we decide that now you're a part of this group. And so our society has done this. And so really it is kind of stupid, right? To say, okay, these people belong to this group for this reason. But I wanted to tell that story because it was really quite interesting that people decided that because we have this one thing in common, like, yes, we're a team, but that's exactly what we did as a group of educated adults. We were put into this one group because of your earlobe, and all of a sudden we have a camaraderie with those people. So just something to think about. And Casey, thank you for putting that there. I had to just share that story because it is kind of silly.
Any other students that have a suggestion, a comment, question? We have, 15 more minutes, Mr. Gregory, is that right?
I believe Lisa has her hand up.
Hi, I'm Tate. I go to HP Woodlawn. I'm a rising 9th grader. And my question is, what if you're in a group of friends and you each have different interests, but they decide to make a group chat with all of you and name it something, but they know that you have a very strong opinion about it, so they make fun of it?
Can you give me an example?
Well, I had this happen to me a few weeks ago in a group chat of my friends saying like horses suck or something like that, because I like to ride horses, and they all know, like, in my strong opinion, like, I like doing that. So I don't know if it was like intentionally a joke or like something else. So
Yeah, and I'll say, Tate, I think context is important, right? So two people who know each other really well might joke to each other that might border on mean, but that's the way that they interact with each other, and they are comfortable with that. But as Dr. Duran said earlier, I think if someone says, please stop, or I don't like that, can you please not talk like that, or in the case of online communication, type those things, and then it continues to happen, well, then that does become, it gets to the level of harassment. That is not okay, right? It's okay for people to make mistakes and say, oh, I thought that you would think that's funny, and then move past that. That's fine too. But if it keeps on happening after somebody's been confronted, that's when it really gets into the area where I think you might need some help. And that's where somebody like any of the adults on this call, if it's in a school situation especially, could probably help with that situation, whether it's about horses, whether it's about interests, whether it's about race, ethnicity, where somebody comes from, where somebody lives. That's something that we're here to help you work through. Like, what's the line there? And if that person's a friend, as many people have said, it's hard to check your friend. It's one of the hardest things to do, is to speak up, and somebody who you like, admire, has spent a lot of time with, and to say you're wrong in this situation is very hard, but it's also very brave.
okay.
So,
And I also think, go ahead, Mr. Gregory.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and maybe it's not a time to be too personal, but, middle school is a really tough time for everyone. You're trying to figure everything out. You're an in-betweener. You're between your teenage years and your elementary years, and you're growing up, and, you don't even know what you don't know yet. You don't know what you don't like or what you do like, because you're going to experience horses. And then maybe you might be you might take that into being a veterinarian one day, or something like that in your love and your passion. So someone that says that I don't like horses, maybe it's because they haven't experienced horses yet. And maybe you can share that with them and say, hey, what if I showed you what it's like to ride a horse? Or what if I wasn't going to be able to take you to even see a horse? And I know that we have a horse here in Arlington, and that would be a perfect place to start, of introducing someone to something different. I know when I was a younger kid, there are some vegetables that I didn't like, but I now love those vegetables, and those things. So what I'm saying is that sometimes people do not know what they don't know. I like to play golf from time to time, but when I was a younger kid, it was always about basketball, baseball, and football. But as I grew and I took to a different sport and I learned it, then I realized I actually could appreciate it. So use that as an opportunity to maybe introduce someone to something that new that they haven't experienced yet.
And I was going to add, when they're your friends, that you, as Mr. McBride said, really helping them understand how it makes you feel. Let them know they might not have meant that in the way that you felt it. They might not have realized how it made you feel. So you've got to be brave and let them know. And if they're really your friend, they'll listen and they'll understand, and it might take some time. But I will say this is another hard thing to do, and it's happened to me a few times when I've worked with friends and talked to friends who weren't being very respectful. After a while, when I explained and they listened and they didn't listen, they kept doing it, I had to decide, are these really the group of friends I want to be around? Are this the right group that I need to be with? And sometimes you have to check that and see. And as Mr. Gregory said, in middle school, we're still making new friends, we're still learning, and we want to take the time to make sure we listen to one another, but we have to make good choices about the people that we surround ourselves with. We have to make good choices about the people we hang out with, that we talk to, and try to make good friends and try to get them to learn. But if they keep disrespecting and not listening after you've tried, after you've stood up, after you've been brave, then maybe you have to stop and think and ask yourself, is this the group of people that I really want to be with, who aren't respecting me or respecting other people? And that's not easy. And that's not what you do first. I'm not saying you do that right away, but I'm saying that you have to keep thinking about that, and don't, after a while, surround yourself with people who aren't doing good for you or doing good for others, respecting you or respecting others. We have to make good choices as we move on in life. And over the years, being much older than all of you, there are certain people I've had to say, maybe we're not meant to be friends because you're not being respectful of me, or you're not being respectful of other people. And I don't like how you talk about other people. So I've that's sometimes something we have to do.
I think I see Ethan that has a question. Mr. Edwards?
Yeah. So I was wondering, wait, so the resource officers are still here, right?
They are.
So I was wondering if, so do they go on like patrol or something? I don't really understand how resource officers, because I might have a question if they like saw something that an officer did wrong in like the field or something when they're arresting. I don't know any, I don't know if they would have that experience, but.
Officer Souls and Officer.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, so I can speak to that. So is your question about just during the course of my duties, if I were to see, one of my peers that I work with doing something wrong, what actions I would take?
Yes.
Okay. So in my experience, if someone has done something wrong at our department, we also, citizens have the right, they can complain on an officer, they can file a formal complaint. Officers can also file a formal complaint when if someone does something that is violating someone's rights, or violating policy. And that is something that we take very seriously, because so much of my job depends on keeping the public's trust. And so if I allow something to go, act like I sweep it under the rug, or if I don't say something or intervene, I'm just as complicit in the immoral or the wrong act as the officer that's actually doing it. And so it's something that is instilled upon us, when we go through our academy and through continuous training, that we do speak out against, the wrong or anything that we see, and that you do denounce it. You don't just, let it go or say, oh, well, that person just made a mistake. There are some issues or some things that may come up where it may not rise to that level to where there has to be a formal complaint, or there can be something where I can have a conversation with someone if they make a mistake. But if it's something that is, across the line, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to go and do a formal complaint, because so much of what we do depends on that.
How about, I see that Skylar had a question.
So my question is, how do you guys feel about the term ACAB?
ACAB, is that all cops are bad, or the other word?
Yeah.
So for me, I don't take it personal, and the reason why is because there are officers that, keeping in what I just said, have done the job the wrong way and have, made what this badge represents look bad. And so I think that it's, people are upset, they're frustrated, and when you have someone who does, the job that I do, we are a part of the community, and so the community depends on us to do our job the right way. And so when we fail the community, they have a right to be angry, and they have a right to voice their frustration or say things like that. I take it, it's my responsibility, I feel, to go out every single day and have positive impacts with folks in the community, whether it's at my schools, Swanson Middle School, Barrett and McKinley Elementary School. But I also know that I'm one officer, and, your interaction may be great with me, but maybe it's not that great with another officer. And that doesn't mean that what you're saying or your frustration isn't validated. And so I just do, and our department does our best job to just try to, have the best positive interactions with the youth in the community so that we can keep that trust. And it's something that we take important, very seriously. That comment doesn't bother me. I don't take it personal.
Officer Brooks, I want you to kind of, we have about 5 more minutes, but I want to expand upon something that you just mentioned about the community. And can you talk a little bit about what your plans are in the community and what you want to do for our students?
Absolutely. And so right now, myself and my partner, Detective Soul, we're both working on patrol right now with school being out. Obviously, we aren't in our normal capacity, but a lot of the issues that I've listened in on and that you've all talked about today is something that I'm very passionate about, something that we're very passionate about. And we are constantly trying to work to, bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community, because right now this is a time where, cops don't look good, and there are mistakes of the few that have, messed with the reputation of most, but I also don't, diminish those few and say that, well, it's just a few. Like, that's important, especially with what we're tasked with. And so we are actively in the community trying to have, speaking engagements and listen to, what the community is saying, especially the youth, because that's our, the area that we serve most. And so we're coming up with a lot of great ideas of, we have some events that we want to plan, to cookouts, to, ice cream socials, different things where we give the community an opportunity to speak with us and, just really listen and understand one another, because a lot of times, it's a lot of talking at each other, but no one's actually listening. And so in this instance, I think it's more important for us to listen to you all rather than, me to explain to you what's going on, because, like I said, the trust, I feel like, law enforcement has, lost some of that trust. And so we're going to work towards doing that and having those positive impacts. So we have a few things planned. We have a lot of really cool stuff that we're working on that I'm excited about. And, we plan on partnering with Aaron, and, we love to continue to partner with APS on some of these events. And we plan on reaching out because, it's cheesy as it sounds, the young people, like, you guys are the future, I'm the future too, I'm not that old, but, I want to, you all are really going to drive, things and make this truly a better place. And when I think of, my little son at home, I want a better world for him. And so, but yeah, we got some nice stuff coming up. And so stay tuned. We'll be in contact with you all about what we're working on.
All right, so we have about 2 minutes left. I know that Sedona had one last question, and I wanted to let her ask her question, and then I want to give us our next steps before we conclude today. What's next? Sedona, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask, like, if I do say something like, I don't know, like, not good, I guess, like, what can I do, like, to make sure it doesn't happen again? I want to make sure that I'm not, like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
It does make sense. And I think we always have to be aware that we're not perfect and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to say some things that might be insensitive for others. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that to that person and apologize, and to really have a better understanding of why did I say what I said. But you first have to acknowledge that what you said was wrong and try to ask that person for forgiveness. And when I talk about forgiveness, it's a very strong thing, but in order to be forgiven is to also say, hey, I'm willing to learn from my mistakes and acknowledge that I made a mistake, and I would do my best not to make that same mistake again.
Okay.
And I wanted to add that sometimes things come across from friends and adults as joke when they are doing or saying offensive things. And I want you to know that when you tell about their behavior or where you call their attention, you might also be helping someone who's in pain. So you're actually helping them, you know? So it's okay. And it's okay, the fact that you're being so reflective about what if I do something wrong? What if I say the wrong thing? Well, that's the perfect place to be, because that means that you're being reflective and you're being aware of who you are and your behavior. And if you're aware, then you can do something, right? Not
Okay.
only to help yourself, but to help others, people who might not be aware and not displaying those type of behaviors, either out of anger, out of pain, out of ignorance, who knows? But the more aware we are, we be in a better position to help each other, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's been a great initial discussion and conversation. So I want to thank everyone for being here. So what's next? In 2 weeks, we're going to do this again. But the topic will be really around law enforcement and policing, because many of us have the questions about that. And our officers will be back, and hopefully we'll also have some other guests who will be joining us as well. So, start thinking about your questions now. There'll be another registration that'll come up and pop up for you to register. And please give us your questions ahead of time so we can be prepared for them, that you have for the police and anything that we've seen, even that's going to be more recent events and more current events, and what those conversations are. And also give us some feedback on how we did today. Let us know, how we can better engage you or what you would like to learn more about. We're here, and we're here for you. So I'll conclude, but I'll leave it over to Dr. Duran if he has any parting words for us.
So thank you. I'm so happy to have everyone here with us. It's been wonderful to listen and to get some great questions from you and good suggestions. And I said I was going to be a broken record, and I'm going to say it again. I want everyone, what you can do from today, what take away from today from me, is that we need to listen, we need to speak up, we need to make sure that we're around people that are treating everyone with respect. If people are not, then you need to talk to them about it. You need to let us know as adults in the school so that we can help you with that, and make good choices around the people that you hang out with. And if you're hanging out with people who you've tried to talk to about this and they continue, then those aren't people you need to be hanging around with. And so make good choices for yourself. As Sedona was asking about how can I be better? What can I do about yourself and things you say and you do? Help your friends do better things about what they are saying and what they're doing. And then at the end of the day, surround yourself by those good people and quality people who are making sure that they're trying to make this world better, and they're trying to make your school better, and trying to make all of our world better. So that's not easy though. So as I think Mr. McBride said in his comments, you have to be brave and you have to be uncomfortable sometimes. But if you do that, we're here to help you. We're here to support you. And I'm so happy that you wanted to engage with us in this conversation today. Thank you for Mr. Gregory putting it together, and for all the adults who are here supporting you, our APS staff who are here, Officer Brooks who came on. Thank you for being here for our students. You can see you have a lot of adults who are here to help you. We've all experienced this too. We have to do the same things I'm telling you. I have to be brave. I have to stand up. I have to speak up. I have to choose the people that I surround myself with. So I'm not telling you something I don't do. We all have to do it. And when we all do it together, that will make us a better APS, a better Arlington, and a better world that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. Stay well, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
so
Bye.
much.
Next one.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Next time.
Thank you.
Shannon, stay on it. Carolyn.